The scale and the scope of Donald Trump's fraud is staggering. And so too is his ego and his belief that the rules do not apply to him. Today, we are holding Donald Trump accountable. We are holding him accountable for lying, cheating, and a lack of contrition, and for flouting the rules that all of us must play by. Because there cannot be different rules for different people in this country, and former presidents are no exception. This decision is a massive victory for every American who believes in that simple but fundamental pillar of our democracy, that the rule of law applies to all of us, equally, fairly, and justly.
All right, some powerful words from Attorney General Letitia James, who talked about the former President Donald Trump practicing not the art of the deal, but the art of the steal. Not only will he be penalized, but his sons are penalized, each paying $4 million apiece. Adam Weissenberg, too, he's going to be fined $1 million. So we have a lot of moving parts here, but she was firm and she was deliberate and she was intent in making sure that people knew that Donald Trump cannot defraud anyone, especially not in New York. Matt, what do you think about, first of all, this particular amount of money that Trump is supposed to be paying? We know he's going to appeal it, but that is the charge and that was the sum today.
Well, I think it's a staggering amount of money. But one of the things, if you'll indulge me, that I really wanted to break down for the viewers is something I was confused about. And I actually talked to my law partner before I came on the show. And I said, you know, Trump's team is crazy. Why did they go to have a trial in front of just the judge, a bench trial, rather than a jury? And the reason I ask that is because usually you want to have more people who are looking at the facts and have the possibility of having them not reach the threshold to render liability or, in a criminal case, unanimity. But here's the brilliance about all of this that I didn't even realize until today, until I read the judge's order. Letitia James and her team are brilliant because what they brought is a case not seeking monetary damages. They brought a case seeking equitable relief, so disgorgement. And what that means is that Mr. Trump and his cadre of businesses have to pay back ill-gotten gains, not necessarily paying on a monetary judgment. The reason that's brilliant is in New York, I didn't know this, but the law that they prosecuted this case under from a civil standpoint does not allow for jury trials. Because it's equitable relief, they get to present that in a trial to just the judge. What the judge, I think, did here that was absolutely brilliant is he issued a 92-page opinion where he did his findings of fact and conclusions of law. And what those are is where a judge says, these are the facts that I found, and here's what that means legally. He issued that for every witness. So he literally said, here's what I got from this witness. Here's what this proved here. Here's what, this proved there. And the reason all of that is important in the overall scope is this will undoubtedly be appealed. But when it's appealed at the next level, the judges at the next level will look to see whether he abused his discretion. And they will basically, generally the way it works is they give him deference for the decisions that he made based on his findings of fact and conclusions of law. So, as much as we talk about the brilliance of these two black women, Fani Willis and Tish James, this is brilliant. The legal strategy here is genius to me because the way they brought it took away his ability to have a jury trial. It goes just in front of a judge. And then here, once the judge, if he makes the decision that he's liable, that judge gets to determine based on another judge being involved as kind of an independent monitor what he thinks the disgorgement amount is. So this amount is what the Trump companies and the individual defendants have to pay back for the ill-gotten gains with the fraud. And I think the legal strategy just all around was brilliant in how they approached this. And I think it is a watershed moment and one that shows that, if the right person is in office and they investigate it the right way and they conceptualize the case the right way, there's really a chance to hold somebody accountable where you can prove to a finder of fact that, in fact, there has been a breaking of the law as they did here.
And you make a very valid point in that on appeal, they're not arguing the facts of the case. But when you look at the facts themselves, they're going to see it really, you're looking at the numbers. You're looking at the actual numbers, and that's what this translates to. And that's how they actually got these particular numbers that can't be refuted based upon their own testimony, is what you're saying.
Exactly. And I think the judge protected that against the appeal. I mean, that's not to say that the appellate court could not disagree with his findings of fact and conclusions of law. But, you know, it's going to be very hard to paint this as erroneous, as his decision as not being based in, you know, his independent qualification of the facts and evaluation of the facts, especially because he delineated all of that in a nearly 100-page order. So I think on both sides, this is going to be very strong. It doesn't mean there won't be some part of it that may come back down on appeal. But this was brilliant in terms of the strategy and how it was argued, and even the judge in terms of how he rendered his order.
Kelly, what also came out of this case is that there's going to be a monitor that will continue monitoring. This is someone who already has been monitoring, someone who Trump has said messed up a number of business deals by the tune of millions. What are your thoughts, Kelly, about this monitor and what that really means and translates into when we talk about Trump and the way that, well, he really can't do a lot of business, but just in terms of the business itself, in terms of the Trump organization and how it can even exist?
It feels like this might be the first time in Trump's life, certainly his business life, where he's basically being forced to be held accountable for his actions. A large reason as to why this case even came to be is because he was able to lie. He was able to inflate and conflate and manipulate the number so that he looks like he has more money than he has, or he's more good for the money that he's trying to borrow than he is. And with this judgment, he not only is he not able to do that anymore, there are now powers that be that are responsible for making sure that he's not even able to do that anymore. So for me, this is refreshing. And I hope that, you know, this is a kind of a cornerstone case for other millionaires and billionaires and businessmen who are doing white collar crimes like this, to be put on notice that at least in New York, you're not going to get away with it, because like she said, white crimes are real crimes too, and they are not victimless. They affect arguably even more people than, say, blue collar crime or crimes that we see on TV that have been televised and frankly glorified.
And Michael, we're not just looking at Trump. We're looking at Alan Weissenberg, and then we are looking at his sons. They are penalized in the amount of $4 million apiece. They can't run the firm. What do you think this means essentially for, that's right, for 2 years? What do you think this essentially means for the Trump organization and whether or not it can really thrive?
Well, the Trump organization is in deep, deep trouble. And if we just go back to 2015, 2016, when Trump was running, I told people when I was on 910 AM Superstation WFDF as a radio show host, I told them week after week, the only people that think Donald Trump is a successful businessman are people who don't understand business and poor people. Because people who understand business knew he was a fraud. We knew he was a fraud back in 2015, 2016. We knew he was a fraud back in when The Apprentice was on, this TV game show. OK, he's never been a successful businessman. And when we look at what broke this, what really led us to this point today. Now, also keep in mind, he was held accountable in the Trump University civil lawsuit. We had to pay $24 million. OK, and that was right before he right when he won the presidency through the Electoral College. He agreed to pay that. He said he was going to fight it, but he agreed to pay that. So we saw that accountability right before he was president. OK, this is an avalanche of it. But what led us to this was the testimony in 2019 before the House Oversight Committee by Michael Cohen, his former attorney for 10 years. This was right before Michael Cohen went to prison, and Michael Cohen knew where all the bodies were buried, and he brought evidence. He brought checks. He brought evidence to prove what he was talking about. And what he testified to was that when Donald Trump applies for loans, he inflates the value of his properties just out of thin air. But then when it's time to pay taxes on those properties, he deflates the value of those properties. OK, so if we just look at one property here, Seven Springs was appraised at $30 million, but Trump's value was $261 million to $291 million. When we look at Mar-a-Lago was appraised at $18 million to $27.6 million. Donald Trump said the value was $426 million to $612 million. OK, so he belongs in prison. All right, I'm telling you, this is straight up fraud. Okay. And in business school, we have to take a class called business ethics. Okay. This is required to graduate. At least when I was in business school 30 years ago, you take business ethics. This is criminal. Okay, now this was a civil trial, but this is criminal. So there's more to come. And Alvin Bragg, that trial starts March 25th. Okay,
that's right.
Trial in Manhattan, that starts March 25th. What brought us to all this was Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels, because Michael Cohen was the one who orchestrated the payoff of Stormy Daniels $130,000, and I was the one who broke the story right here in Detroit on 910 AM WFDF when the story first came out about Stormy Daniels. Okay, it was a story I saw on rawstory.com, and I was on the air with Cliff Russell, who's passed away since then. We were on commercial break. It comes across my news feed. I say, Cliff, take a look at this. We come back from the break. We talk about this. I said, this sounds like campaign finance law violation. Sure enough, that's what it looks like it is. So we'll see how this turns out. This is not going to be a hot boy summer for Donald Trump. I'm telling you right now, this is going to be the worst summer of his life.
You know, Matt, you talked about strategy earlier. Now, some people might say, yeah, there's a lot of snow here, but not the full avalanche. I mean, his sons can get back in the game in a couple of years. Donald Trump, he can't do business in New York for a certain period of time, but it doesn't preclude him from getting loans from other states. What do you say about the fact that this was not just a full kibosh on the Trump organization and Trump not being able to do anything, anywhere in perpetuity?
Well, that's an interesting question. And I think part of it is, businesses very often don't even incorporate in the states where they do business. They might incorporate in Delaware. So, he's got a team of lawyers that will surely figure out a way for him to be involved in the Trump organization with its doing business. But to pivot a little bit, what I think is very interesting about this, and I've been thinking about with his future criminal cases, particularly the case that DA Bragg will be prosecuting, there's a principle in the rules of evidence in pretty much every state and in the federal rules that says extraneous evidence or evidence outside of the case you're on trial for can sometimes come in to show motive or opportunity or intent or other things like that, right? And I think here,
yes,
this could be a watershed moment in that trial, because the premise of DA Bragg's trial is the idea that he falsified some records, right? Which would be another way of saying fraud. So it stands to reason that the prosecutors there are very happy about this ruling today, because at least if I were a prosecutor, I would argue this shows MO. This shows the modus operandi, right? Like what they do is engage in fraud. He's now been found to be liable of this fraud in a civil trial. And I think with the appropriate limiting instructions, it might come in a way that doesn't take away his constitutional rights on the criminal end. So I'm really interested in seeing what interplay this has with criminal cases, particularly those where he's accused of some kind of fraud or what we call moral turpitude, which is dishonesty in the law. I think there's a very good chance that Jack Smith and also DA Bragg and the other prosecutors are very excited about this ruling and trying to find a way to include it to buttress their own criminal cases against Mr. Trump.
Agreed. I was thinking that. In fact, Kelly, let me pull you in here. A good day for Alvin Bragg, too, and someone who is preparing for March 25th to look at a way to connect these dots and really allow people to see a full picture. I think that this is something that is working in Bragg's favor.
I mean, for sure. I think that as far as these cases are concerned, I think us lawyers, us politi-nerds, everybody, we're really excited about it. But the American people really just want a president that's not Donald Trump. I think that's really what we're getting at here. I just want, at least that's what's on my heart to share today. I want this to be kind of wrapped up, or at the very least going, so that by the time the election is like really underway, like we're seeing the ads left and right, past primaries, all these things, that it's going to look like crap, absolute crap, if this man is even close to winning the election. There needs to be something like in the atmosphere that is just like 2 + 2 = 4. Trump should not be president. He cannot be president. Anything but him. That's where I'm at with it. Alvin Bragg, God bless you. Take this, run with it. But anything except this man in the Oval Office for 4 more years.
And Kelly, I want to stay with you for a moment. Do you think that the sting of the Stormy Daniels fraud case, and then it also goes into tax fraud because of the way that she was paid, do you think that the sting of that is still as hurtful. We've been talking about that case for years. And it just seems to me when I speak to people that they don't really think, especially in comparison to some of these other things, that it's actually that big of a deal anymore.
And I think that's the issue, because let's just think about what has happened between 2016 and 2020, before Biden was in office. So much was happening as far as corruption and improprieties and, like, I'm saying the word wrong, but just wrong things were happening in this administration, such that it was just one thing after another, both on his personal end and on the political end. And it was so overwhelming that for something big to happen, such as Stormy Daniels, it was like a mustard seed in this mountain of pine needles that was happening with this administration. As far as morals and things that presidents should aspire to be or should be for us to aspire to, the bar has been set below Satan's sphincter as far as what is, standard anymore. Right? So,
absolutely.
Should the Stormy Daniels thing? I'm sorry?
I said a lot has changed.
Yeah, a lot has changed. Should the Stormy Daniels thing be a big deal? Yes. In a world prior to 2016, this would have been beyond the Monica Lewinsky scandal, right? But
yes,
frankly, we elected a president who already said he's going to grab him by the pussy. Right. And I don't mean to sound vulgar, but that's what he said. And if that wasn't enough to not have him in office, anything else, frankly, is up for grabs and good to go, as evidence as what we are seeing now in 2024 regarding this man, between the lawsuits and the scandals and the corruptions and the secret partnerships and all of these things. Like I said, the bar is beneath hell when it comes to what is acceptable anymore. Stormy Daniels should not be acceptable, but unfortunately, in the grand scheme of things, it is.
Yeah. I'm going to piggyback off of what Matt said as before we go to break. And that is, there's one thing that you really cannot refute, though, and that is the numbers that he inflated in terms of the cost and the values of all of his properties, and the numbers and the money that was gained on his end. 2 + 2 was always 4.
A new year for a new you. Curl Prep Natural Hair Solutions at curlprep.com is an amazing organic line for curls, locks, braids, twists, and even those wigs and extensions. Women, men, and children are loving this line. Look at this video and you be the judge. People line up to see this product in action at hair shows, and when they take a seat and try it, they don't believe it's their hair. Buy the products at curlprep.com. It works on all hair types. Use code Roland, that's ROLAND, lowercase letters, to get a 15% discount. Parents, remove the ouch. You will love this system because you can comb the product through your child's hair with your fingers. Seasoned saints are loving the product. It's all at curlprep.com. Use code Roland, lowercase letters, to get a 15% discount. You won't believe it's your hair.
Give me that bass, give me that beat. Hit on your tongue, I can feel an explosion. I'll take another if we keep it going. Open it up, give a toast to the